Hey, everybody, it's Mark Thompson, and this is the Chief Executive Podcast. You know, I have the pleasure of working with the world's leading chief executives, including people like David Stern, who for 3 decades perhaps had more influence in that 30-year period by one individual than in the history of the NBA. And this, of course, is an exciting time for the NBA. It was a time in which he has really helped lead to the explosion in the value of the franchises themselves and support of the Women's Basketball Association and so much impact in terms of social responsibility. Well, David was kind enough to invite me to hang out with him at, of all places, the World Economic Forum in Zurich. So please enjoy this conversation with the iconic David Stern. David, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to ask you about this passion for basketball, and I know that guys like I didn't get picked for the basketball squad in college, and I assume perhaps maybe you did.
No, as a matter of fact, I didn't. My love for the game in New York City growing up, you just were a Knicks fan, and for us, I grew up in a section of Manhattan called Chelsea, which was 23rd Street or so. The Garden was at 49th, and you walked up 8th Avenue, and for 50 cents, and I guess we call it the GO, you got seats upstairs, and we used to go on Saturday afternoons, and actually during the week, my dad, who owned, actually, strangely enough, a delicatessen on 23rd Street, it was a big deal to go up on a Thursday night, go into the Garden and see a doubleheader. The Knicks might be playing the Syracuse Nationals, and the Celtics might be playing the Philadelphia Warriors, and can you imagine a doubleheader of basketball? I mean, whoever heard of such a thing with 4 different teams? It was terrific, and I loved the game. I wasn't particularly good, although I don't have any ACL left because of my exploits on a lawyers basketball league. So I was 5'10" when I was 13, and I was 5'10" when I was 33, and I'm probably 5'9 3/4" now, and so I went from becoming a slow forward to a slow guard. But I had my nose broken a couple of times, so I can't claim to be a serious basketball player.
I was just picturing you playing street ball in the Bronx, and I'm glad to hear that you had a few broken bones along the way.
Yes, always.
When you have this responsibility as commissioner, you've got a lot of enormously talented people and players and teams to work with. They have very different ways of handling the game, managing themselves, and so forth. How do you get buy-in? How do you pull all the big egos together so they can kind of move in the right direction?
I think that number one, I really like people. I enjoy working with them, arguing with them, tilting with them, and I think that as long as I have a sense of where I want to go, and I share it with them, and they sort of share, if not either my passion or my view, but share with me the sense that we're all working on the same thing, and we all want the game to do well. That even though we might not agree on precise methods, the community activity, as it were, I think gets contributed to by everybody. And there'll always be some hot spots along the way, but for the last, I guess, 20 years or so, I think that the group of people at the NBA, together with the players, together with the owners, have been on the same page. It has had to be a very big page to include them all, but there is a sense that we're all going to benefit, and we all want this sport to grow into the global product that we know it can be.
If you think about new coaches coming into a team, and you were having an opportunity to coach that coach to avoid some of the pitfalls that you've seen, because you've been having a front row seat on the sport and also the development of the game and the relationship with the players, what would be the 1 or 2 pitfalls that you coach them to avoid?
I would give them advice that I think would probably get them into trouble, but it's the way I would coach, and that is, you have to set a standard, a set of rules, if you would, and you got to apply them to everybody, and be yourself in terms of your vision of what you want for the team. Because as you start making individual concessions from those rules to individuals based not upon their necessary need for those exceptions, but because of their supposed talent or importance to the team, I think you're going to slide down to nothing and lose the respect of your players.
Keep your values strong. Keep them out there.
Keep your values strong. Be ready to deviate and compromise on a particular case where there's a need based upon a person's personality or needs that are genuine, and you don't want to be inflexible. But don't do it based upon simply the importance of that person to the effort. If his need isn't real, but it's just a favor being asked or a special exception being taken because he can get away with it. I think that as I listen to players, and that's where I get that from, they love to have coaches that treat them alike, that gather all the players together in pursuit of a goal, and that don't make special exceptions based upon advantage being taken by one person.
If you were to think about all the conflict and controversy that's occurred, what would be kind of one of the most significant acts of courageous leadership that you've seen undertaken, that you've experienced while you've been watching the development of the sport?
Well, I can just give you a prototype. I think that when I watched a young coach, and this is not the most courageous, this is just an act of principle, a young coach who gets involved like a Nate McMillan and is being tested by a Gary Payton, and he says, no, we're not going to do it that way, and he suspends his star player. Or if he doesn't suspend him, he benches him and sends him to think about the fact that they're going to do it a certain way overall for the team. And I always nod when I see that, and I watch a Pat Riley, who's I think known as a tough sort of taskmaster, but he has a set of values and he imparts them to the team. And then if he has to suspend a player, I think he does. And I think if anything, it gives him the support of the overall team. Whenever I see a coach or a team sort of back away, I think that I see trouble coming. And I don't mean to go looking for the fight. I mean, just...
There are plenty out there.
There are plenty out there. But no, I just do it. And so no spectacular act of courage. The individual acts of courage, to me, are more importantly described as Magic Johnson deciding that he was, even though he was HIV positive, he wasn't going to shrivel up and go away. And some combination of medical miracle and will, almost a decade later, Magic looks great and seems to be going strong. And Alonzo Mourning, who has this degenerative kidney disease, or Sean Elliott that is able to come back after having a kidney transplant. Those are, to me, sort of acts of courage. The rest are sort of principles of leadership and herding, but not necessarily acts of courage.
Now you've got this enormous organization and the fastest growing one in this part of the world. Now, if you were to think about a lesson that you wish, or a skill that you had today that you could have had when you first stepped into this role and made the transformation, would there be a lesson there that you could share with us?
Well, I think that's a simple one, and that is that you have to learn how to transfer your own or impart your own principles, and then learn how to delegate. And by delegation, that doesn't mean delegation and run away from it, but delegation where others should take 92% of the effort and do it, and you get involved sort of along the way at appropriate times, but you shepherd it really in more of a leadership role. And I've that's been slow in coming to me. I'm the CEO, but sometimes I act too much on particular projects, like I'm the project manager, and that's fun, and maybe that's why I do it. for the very important things, but I think if anything, I have tended to do too much of that on too many matters, and that detracts from the ability to spend quality time thinking more strategically. And I think that's a benefit to the organization when the CEO has the opportunity to spend a lot more time on strategic matters. Now, unfortunately, whether it's a lockout or a collective bargaining or a television negotiation or having a couple of franchises that want to move to the same city, that tends to take your time and focus your attention. But short of those very, very large items, I think the lesson I've learned is you've got to be able to step back and focus your attention on broad strategic issues.
What's the most rewarding thing about your role as a leader here?
I would say the most rewarding thing is, well, number one, just as a management matter, to see an organization that is starts at 24 people and gets to be 1,100, and when a number of people come in and talk very often on exit interviews where they're moving back home to Canada or getting married and going to California or what have you, and they talk about their co-workers and how they're really very sorry to leave and will always consider them members of the NBA family because they've made great friends here, they've enjoyed working, they have a passion for what we do and the people who do it. And I think being part of a place that has that kind of a notion to it, that people actually can do what they enjoy doing with people that they enjoy being with in a context where they enjoy being, is very, very rewarding. On a sort of a more macro level, I think the most rewarding thing is that we have a sport that people thought was essentially too black for America and the world to accept. And that was in circa 78 to 82. And post Dr. J, post Michael, post Magic, and currently Allen and Iverson and Vince Carter and you name it, Kevin Garnett, Shaq, Kobe. We have a group of players, both black and white, who continue to excite not only America but the world.
David, I want to thank you for joining us.
Delighted to have been invited on.
Thanks for listening to the Chief Executive Podcast. I'm Mark Thompson, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more episodes every week.